You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Hey, I hope you checked out last week's episode. We were talking about the most important sales call, the interview. And what came out of it for me was that you really have to prepare for every meeting. You really have to be creative. You have to understand it's not just about your product. It is about bonding with that other person. And we give a lot of great examples in that interview with Jason Price from Covideo. Check it out. It was last week, the most important sales call you make. I also did a great episode, if I must say so myself, on focus, on really utilizing the most important resource that we have, our time, on the things that matter. They're going to help us close things out this year in 2018. Man, it is just flying by now, isn't it? This week, we're going to be talking about progression of every step of the sale, moving it forward every single step. So I invited a friend of mine on today. We're going to be talking about each and single little step. How do you get those mini commitments that move a complex sale from where it is to where it needs to be? Now, I hope for sure you're checking out nudge.ai. The blog is fantastic about how people are buying. They're putting out some videos on how to follow up with people, keep track of people, keep people top of mind, keep track of where you are with them, as well as putting your steps into Pipedrive. And most of all, at the end, I'm going to be talking about the most important investment you'll ever make. The highest ROI, higher than Bitcoin. It makes Bitcoin look like, a waste of money. The biggest investment you'll ever make. So we'll be talking about that. Also, this week on the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, I've got a great guest. We're going to be talking about how to, really accelerate a company, put together a team, put together a structure. You're really going to like it, especially if you ever want to become a sales leader. Wait a minute. Let's get into the interview. Let's start talking about moving the deal step by step with real value, with really giving instead of just pitching. Let's get into the interview. Other end of the sales cycle compared to everybody else's book that's been coming out over the last year. Everyone else has been focusing on prospecting. What was your motivation?
So much bad advice. I mean, the literature, you really can't call what we do in sales writing literature. I mean, that's kind of an exaggeration. But the sales books and the content that comes out around closing was really good for 30 or 40 years ago, and it's just really bad now. And this idea of things like the alternative of choice. Brian, what works better for you, 10 a.m. on Wednesday or 2 p.m. on Thursday? That kind of a tie down, or that language where I'm not giving you a choice, I'm giving you the alternative of 2 times where there is no choice for you. You're meeting with me. That kind of stuff now doesn't work, and it causes people to reduce the amount of trust they have in you because you're not really having the kind of conversation that we have now. What's happened is sales has gotten more complicated. It's gotten more difficult. The world's more complicated and difficult. And it now requires that you bring a different set of skills and tools to the conversation. And the reason that I wrote The Lost Art of Closing was specifically because it's the final close now for us is the easiest of all things. And you don't need a close with a name. I don't even know what the doorknob close is. What is that? I mean, how do you use something like that? All the ones before it are more difficult. And specifically, like even getting time, that's difficult now. Getting consensus from a group of people who don't even agree with each other, that's difficult. Getting people to invest the right amount of money, those are the commitments that make the final one easy. And I think it was time to update this for what people who are succeeding are really doing, which is what Neil Rackham called getting an advance in spin selling. Just no one ever wrote down all the advances until this book. And that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, because it reminds me of, when I started in sales, the first thing everybody does is they buy books. And all the books were written by people who did door-to-door or single call sales. And in those cases, having, 57 closes or having a playbook of conversations may have made sense because you're going to see the same things over and over again. But when you're selling business to business and there's all these people involved, those things just don't really work.
No, in fact, those will kill your deal. And it's because they're so devoid of the trust that you need in a longer term relationship. And I mean, I'll go back to spin selling because Rackham is just, in my opinion, one of the best. If it's a small sale and there's no risk, ask for the business. It's not a big deal. They don't have much at stake and you don't have much at stake. But when you start to get into multi-million dollars or 9-figure deals, I mean, you're looking at a very, very different world. And those very same behaviors will destroy trust so fast. We just live in a very different world where I think it's a much more difficult place to sell. And I think that this update of, we have to have all these conversations has given people a blueprint. And so far, the results from the book have been, anybody who's using it continues to send me notes. I didn't even know I needed that commitment. And now I understand where this deal went off the tracks and I'm going back to fix it.
Well, that's it. And if you look at anybody's, sales process that they publish online, it's all the same. It's like, get the meeting, give the presentation, handle the objections, give them a proposal, then follow up. And it's like, well, guess where it dies?
Yeah, right there.
Right after you give them the proposal.
Yeah.
And then, we were taught, oh, now you got to go in with insight. And it's like, okay, that's one approach. But I think what people don't understand is that there is a process. There's multiple steps. And a lot of people aren't writing about it because a lot of people don't know about it. And a lot of people today are being managed by people who don't know there are a lot of steps.
Yeah. It's the last couple of days I've been writing about the fact that we love metrics that are inputs and we hate metrics that are outputs. I can count your calls. Yeah. I can count your meetings. That's tangible. I can see the meetings on your calendar. The subjective part, when I ask you, what commitments did you gain and how confident are you that these things are happening? And is there a pattern of commitments being kept or missed? The subjective stuff makes us nuts. And the old, what I described, I think, in what went up today is, the oldest of old school sales managers just want to hit the more button, make more calls, have more meetings. Yeah, but what if they're not good meetings? More of them will still be better than fewer. Well, you got to go back and look at the input. We have to help the person be effective. And we would rather just ask for more than to do the work to helping people understand what this process looks like and how to have, you've done this. So what can be very difficult conversations.
And I think it's getting worse because, the managers are looking at dashboards today instead of looking at customers and reps. And I've been working with Gong on this because they are recording these conversations and then analyzing them and then mapping them to the deals in the CRM and seeing the velocity of them and then doing a comparison of the ones that are moving and closing versus the ones that are stalling.
I don't know if you're going to put show notes here, but if you do the video, it's an outstanding video that Gong's running right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's right. And that's the focusing on the input, right? And focusing on the dashboard is like looking at the scoreboard, hoping to be able to change the score by staring at the scoreboard. And, the input, the people playing the game, if you increase their effectiveness, then you get a better result.
And let's face it, reps are smart enough to know that what the manager is looking at. So if he wants to see more of this, they just click the button a little bit more. The manager smiles, but nothing happens.
Well, this is my favorite story I wrote in the book is with a pipeline meeting. And the executive vice president is going through the deals. And I look at the days that the deal has been in the system, and it's 1,741 days. And I looked at it and I had to get my iPhone out to do the math on that to figure out it was almost 5 years. But I said to him, if this deal was a child, it would be starting kindergarten this year. I mean, it's not a deal. And they're putting stuff in here to keep you happy. But if they were motivated to change, they would have changed. It doesn't take 5 years in this business.
So let's start with like the first chapter on getting that time commitment or the closing on getting time. What do you recommend there?
I think what's happened, customers build up an immunity to what we pitch them with over time, and they've heard the same thing so many times that when I call and say, Brian, love to stop by, introduce myself, introduce my company, ask you some questions about you and learn a little bit more about you. I mean, we've heard that, and the value prop sounds like this. So you're going to talk about you. That'll be great. And then you're going to pull up your slide deck so I can see all the old white guys on your board of directors. And then you'll immediately take me to your locations and then show me all the logos that you've won so that you have credibility. And then you're going to ask me what's keeping me up at night. And the value prop for them is nil. There's no value here. And what I recommend is to have something to say. And I continually tease sales audiences that I get to speak to that you only need two things to be a trusted advisor: trust and advice. And you need both of them. It's a two-part recipe. But if you don't have the advice, if you can't come in and say, I have a view of what's going on in your world, and I have a lot of what I would call situational knowledge of choices that other people are making and decisions they're making right now to deal with the change that's going on in our world, then you have something to say. And you have something that even if they don't buy from you, even if you never have another meeting, if you can come in and say something like, Brian, I'd like to share with you the 4 trends that we see that are causing our clients and prospective clients to make different decisions over the next 12 to 18 months. And listen, I'll leave you with a deck and some questions you can challenge your management team with. And even if there's no next step, you'll have some insights about the things that you might be looking at to work on over the next 12 to 18 months. What do you look like Thursday for an executive briefing? And I'll share this with you. At least there's a trade of value here. And the greater the value that you're trading for the time, the greater the likelihood you get it. But I think that we have to get away from trying to start off by talking about ourselves and our company, because they're interested in their product and their company, not ours. And the sooner we get to that, the better.
And since, no one's given that, how do they get that? How do they get those things, those 4 trends, those 4 ideas, those 4 approaches?
Yeah, you had to ask the hard question, didn't you? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you actually have to do work.
Oh,
and
come on,
it's
Anthony. Is it your third book coming up?
third book's coming up, and you know what? I'm going to outline the process in that book for people because there's so many questions around how do I develop the set of insights, and it really isn't that hard to do. There are so many trends. I'll just pick one, only because it's on my mind because I'm writing the 3rd book right now, which is a delightful process. The editing process, not so great, but the writing process is a lot of fun. And if you just think about something like in the United States right now, every single day of the year, 11,000 baby boomers retire. That's 4.3 million people leaving the workforce every single day that are taking all of their knowledge. They're taking all of their skills. They're taking that sort of knowledge that they have over time, the historical knowledge of what role they're in, and they're leaving, and we're replacing them with Gen X or millennials who don't have the same set of experiences, don't have the same background, haven't had the same time. So what does that mean for companies? Well, it means that you're losing people that already know how to do a job. You're also going to have to replace those people in the tightest labor economy since Richard Nixon was president. How are you going to skill your people up? And there's all these questions that go around it that are the tough questions to ask. And this is where all the action is to say with 11,000 baby boomers retiring every day, what's your plan to identify the people with the skills or train them to be able to backfill these roles? At the same time, you can take this another direction and just think about how many people are now going on Medicare and Medicaid every year. And what does that mean for the burden on businesses and their taxes and the Medicare tax and the whole system? There's a shortage of doctors already. I mean, there's all these things that you can just take it lots of different directions. But I think that the super trends tell you that the world is changing and it doesn't really care whether you like it or not. It's constant, accelerating, disruptive change. And you have to pay attention to these things and say, how's this going to impact my client? So you have to read and you have to think. You have to do the hard stuff. But again, we're back to trusted advisor. If you only have the trust, you're missing a big part of the 2-part recipe.
Well, I don't think you get trust until you've done something.
Yes, that's true too.
Until you've given some kind of value other than, an email is not value. A link is not value. Your PDF is not value. And I think you brought up, one of my 3 magic words is just start off with things have changed, right? Because can you think of any industry that is not being completely changed in the last 5 years?
No, and I think that you're exactly right. And this is the starting point for the conversation is exactly why do I have to change now? And if I do have to change, how can I even think about that when I don't understand all the chaos that's going on around me? And I mean, that's what it really feels like to people is I don't have enough information. I don't even know how to interpret the information that I do have. I've got all these external factors working on me, and you're seeing whole industries disrupted with Ubers and Airbnbs. I went to Harvard Business School for their executive education program called OPM, and we had a case study on Apple as to whether or not they should exist when they're not capable of getting greater than 5% market share. And then the iPhone came out, and the trajectory changed completely. Now I'm wondering if they're going to have a case study on should Google exist. And you look at it and you think, well, this is a bit player. They've got less than 5% of the market share when it comes to the platform, like a Windows that they're competing with. And then you find out Steve Jobs has a different trajectory, and they end up winning the game and maybe the first company worth $1 trillion. Who knew?
And that's it. And probably most of the people listening to this can't remember the world pre-iPhone.
Yeah, that's right.
And you look at, our industry, kind of, the sales effectiveness industry. It's like, how much has that changed in the last 5 years? I mean, if anyone who's listening to this can say, look at your customers' industry, what is going to change for them? Because they're not seeing it.
The taxi companies, had they seen the fact that the phone was going to allow you to organize all black car drivers, they should have done it. And nobody was better prepared to do Airbnb than somebody like Hilton, but they think that they're protecting the old way. And you do have to look and say, what is it going to look like in the future? Because it's going to continue to change. And I think my opinion is it's accelerating. Oh. The changes are coming faster. So if you don't like change, you're really going to have a tough time.
Right. I mean, a year ago, would you think for 1 second that the grocery industry would be so disruptive? And this year? I mean, you got Amazon buying Whole Foods. You've got all these, meal delivery services.
I mean, you would have had to be Nostradamus to see this. I mean, there's no way. Everything is being changed, and in a lot of ways, it's good. And I think the thing that this always makes me think of is what are the deep structures that are not changing? What isn't going to change? People that are resourceful, people that can figure out what comes next, the ability to take initiative and decide I'm going to be proactive about what I'm doing instead of reactive. Those are the attributes and things that I think make the difference for individuals, is to say what trust isn't changing. Competitiveness isn't changing. Those things tend to stand the test of time. So you're looking for what's changing, and then how do we deal with the change? That's the starting point for sure.
So you're not seeing the old email of, hey, Brian, I do this. I've helped Joe, Mike, and Andy do this other thing, gain 300% revenue increase. This is all cool, but I'd really like to learn more about you. Can I have 15 minutes on Friday? And because you haven't responded, I want to make sure that you weren't eaten by alligators. Oh, or can you point me to the direction of who does care?
Yeah, cute, but not value creating for the person that gets the email. And I think if that was the test, it'd be interesting if an email literally cost $10 or something to send. You would have a lot less of that. People would have to think about, what do I really need to put in this email to get a response from someone? Yes. And because that's not going to do it.
And do you think we're going in the wrong direction by hiring these, people straight out of college, giving them these tools and automation and magic cadence, and not teaching them about their customer's business or business in general, or, how the product is going to impact them?
I had this experience because I have a number of businesses, and I got an email from a person who was desperate for me to click on a link in their email. And it was very clear that they had all the links outlined for me to be able to say, we're working with companies that look like yours. Watch this video to understand what we're doing to help them get this outcome. And I didn't click on the link. I clicked on delete. because it was really just, all about them and nothing about me. And I got another email, and the email had the first email pasted below it, and it said, I want to make sure you didn't miss the opportunity to watch this video, which I was okay missing that opportunity. Honestly, it wasn't like I was missing The Godfather or something. It's a pitch video, so I'm okay. And I delete it, and I get the third email. Now, the third email's got the second email and the first email pasted underneath it. And it's another pitch for me to click on something. And I sent back a note saying, your prospecting approach sucks, and I'm going to point you to Jeb Blunt's Fanatical Prospecting. Pick this book up. Pick up Mike Weinberg's New Sales Simplified, because I think your approach is ineffective, and I'm not going to click on your links. And I got a note back from the rep that said, I didn't even send you any of these emails. They came from our chief marketing officer. And until I got your email, I didn't know who you were. And I'm thinking, this is a terrific approach. Now, if I would click on something or reply, then they're going to have somebody call me because now I'm qualified, right? I've demonstrated interest. And it's a terrible way to set young people who are coming into sales to understand what they're really trying to do. And part of me, I love technology. I use tons and tons of technology, always have cutting edge everything. But this idea that we're going to automate this conversation that we're having around change, and that we're going to try to find a way to reduce it to some common denominator that takes all of the things that have to happen in a human relationship out of it. And we're teaching young people that this is the way to think about it. And they're talking about growth hacking and anything other than doing the work. I think it's a giant, giant mistake. And I think it's going to mean that the sales enablement business grows by leaps and bounds in the future to try to make up for these mistakes.
And that's it. And I see the outcome of this approach is these startups with great technologies, and we see them all the time, they go away because no one's buying it because they're trying to sell it the wrong way. That they're not.
It's not a transactional sale.
It's not.
Yeah, but they want it to be, because then I don't need salespeople.
Everybody wants it to be. All the VCs want it to be. That they don't want to hear from B2B companies that require a sales force. And the problem is, you're not going to get the value for the business without the revenue.
And the VCs and the angels, in a lot of cases, in what I've seen, what they really want is an exit event. And it's just not an interesting way to start a business or run one, is to think about how fast can I flip this thing. If you were thinking about, I'm going to build something that's sustainable, that's going to make a difference in lives, then you would take a very, very different view of it.
And what would you say to the people listening to this that say, boy, this sounds old school. This isn't the right way to do it?
I would tell you, if you want to know what the future looks like in a world of constant accelerating disruptive change, look backwards. Don't look forwards. I mean, if you look forward, you're going to make a giant mistake because, Brian, I don't know how old you are. I'm assuming we're close to the same age. We're in at least the same generation. The world that you and I were promised looked like the Jetsons. I mean, we're supposed to have flying cars by now. I'm supposed to be taking 3 nutrition pills in the morning and wearing a synthetic jumpsuit, and none of those things happened. A lot of the things that are the most important things for you to think about are thousands of years old, like trust, like resourcefulness, like initiative, like learning how to help other people and advise them if that's what you want to do. And all of those things count for way more than the technology does. And as great as technology is, on the transactional end of the business, if that's where you're playing and you want to be transactional, the internet's going to kill you. And all you have to do is look at Amazon to see that. I mean, they're going to be 7% of all retail sales, I think, this Christmas season or something in that neighborhood. That's a massive bite out of the traditional brick and mortar retail approach. And remember, all the brick and mortars now have online too. I don't know what percentage that's going to end up being, but it's going to be enormous. But if you have to go the other way and you're actually trying to create value and you have a strategy that's not transactional, what I would call super relational or consultative, the idea that you can automate anything destroys the model, and you're making an enormous mistake. So I think you look backwards to say, what are the deep structural truths that have allowed people to succeed for millennia? Rather than looking at what can I automate over the next 18 months.
And that is true, because if you look at that, who do you take advice from? Who do you trust? If you don't know somebody, do you trust them? Not in today's world. You don't even know if they're real. And how do you get to, until you have trust, the advice isn't advice, it's information. Right?
It's information, right?
But so how do you do that in this world? Because it is a paradox where we can get our word out so much faster than we could even 5 years ago, but we're not really trusted until we give something. And I think that's when that's the tipping point without the ask.
Without the ask. And I think that's it. And I think that when you're nurturing relationships, you're trying to create value in front of any ask that you make.
Hey, I hope you got a lot out of that. But the key thing is that in each interaction that we have with somebody, we have to understand, how do we progress it to the next stage? How do we get and first know what the next stage is and gently guide them towards it, because they don't know what it is. We cannot be sitting around thinking that there's some buyer's journey. There is no buyer's journey. It's a seller's journey that the buyer goes on. The buyer wants to solve a problem, wants to accomplish something. We have to guide them through it. They don't know how to do it. We do it every day, and we can't be sitting around waiting for them to figure it out. So you really have to understand those things. And the way to do it is to break it down and first know it. Otherwise, it's just two people lost in the dark trying to find their way to the light. Now, let's talk about an investment. Because, with the course, a lot of people are like, oh, let me see if I can get my company to pay for it, or I don't have the time or the money right now. I don't care if you take the course or not. I really, honestly don't. But if you want to make an investment in yourself, if no one else is going to do it, if you're really waiting for someone else to do it, you're in the wrong business. Go be in marketing and support. That's the place for you. You've got to invest in yourself, because this is it. Starting conversations and getting meetings is what's going to drive your career. Otherwise, you're just going to be an order taker. You're going to be sitting around hoping something good happens to you, or that you've been touched by the magic wand of the art of sales or the magician of sales. If that was true, you'd be flying around in your own private jet. Clearly, it isn't. Even I'm telling you, when I sit down for the office hours, I go, I've got to make sure I'm doing this too. Because you slip into the pitch. That is the trap. We've been programmed for it. It's hard to avoid. This is why you need a structured system with practice, with feedback from other people. And that's what I'm trying to do with the course. We've got office hours again this Friday. What is it? Friday the 16th. Office hours at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Send me your problems. I've got most of them. I've been working on some stuff, so it'll be a lot more instructional and Q&A. Send your questions in advance too, because I'll always prioritize, the most urgent questions, but I'm basing this off the most urgent questions. So invest in yourself. If it's not in this course, some other course, to get yourself moving, to get yourself to become better. You can't learn how to play a musical instrument in your room by yourself, trying to figure it out. You got to get feedback. You got to understand how it works. You got to listen to how other people are doing it. Open your mind up, and don't be that person, that B player who's stuck in it. The future of sales is in the complex sale, and the demand is limitless. People are talking about this all the time. Oh, all these sales jobs are going away. Yeah, the B-level jobs, the C-level jobs, they're going to go away because you can put a web page up, or you can hire somebody in some other country that'll work for less money than you. But the ones that can really go out there and engage in new opportunities, create something from scratch, those jobs will never go away. They're salespreneur jobs. And a salespreneur job doesn't invest in Bitcoin. They invest in themselves. Because you know what? At the end of the day, that's what you got. Not something off on a server in Uzbekistan. that someone's going to steal from anyway. I don't even understand the stuff. I'm sorry, I don't. But you know what I do understand is when you learn how to sell, you will always be employed. You will always be able to make money. You'll always be able to make things happen because you will understand people. So make sure. And people say, oh, how do I find the course? I tell you every time, 3 places. Okay, show notes, in the show notes. Second place, on my LinkedIn profile, right in the description. Start the conversation, get the meeting. Third place, and it's actually 4 places. Third place, YouTube channel. First video that comes up in the show notes with a link there. Fourth place, the thing called Google, this crazy company that came out of nowhere. Just search, start the conversation, get the meeting. Thinkific. Think I-F-I-C, and you'll find it right there. Also, I'm going to be putting out a free piece, or really a LinkedIn profile makeover. It's going to be, because I look at some of these people's profiles and I'm like, this isn't your webpage. In 2018, your LinkedIn profile is your webpage. And if you look like a goofball or it's incomplete or, it hasn't been touched in years, it makes you look like you don't have your act together. Sorry. That's what the world tells me. So I'm going to put together a free course there. This has nothing to do with this course. It's going to be basically so you can do a little bit of a makeover. You can see exactly what's wrong. And I'll probably do a makeover for a couple of you if I have time. I've been busy, so busy. Make sure you're checking out the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast as well. Connect up with me on LinkedIn. I'm putting up some funny videos every morning. Give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share. I really appreciate that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
I want to know the truth, because deep down in places that you don't talk about are team and management meetings. You want me on that call. You need me on that call. We use words like fleet view, volume control, total cost of ownership. We use these words as a backbone of a life spent negotiating something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor inclination to explain myself to people who rise and sleep under the very blanket of revenue that I provide and then question the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, may I suggest you pick up a phone and make some sales calls. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to.
Did you expense the lap dances?
I did the job I was hired.
Did you expense the lap dances?
You're goddamn right I did!